Life can be compared to scaling a mountain. The scale and sense of isolation leaves plenty of room for introspection. In the grand journey of self-discovery, there are many trials and tribulations to overcome, and going through such an ordeal can be rigorous. But in the end, you—
Hey.
Wait, what? Steph, what are you doing here?
Hey Ren, I want to do something on your channel.
I'm kinda in the middle of something. I'm actually making content for my channel for once.
Well, I noticed that you're talking about Celeste, and I think I can help.
Okay, wait. How did you even get in here? The front door is locked.
Something something plot magic, something something somehow Palpatine returned. Okay, let's start the review.
Wait, but I didn't finish the intro. The premise of Celeste isn't too unfamiliar in the realm of video games. The main character has to overcome adversities by scaling a mountain, while dealing with the adversities of nature itself. However, Madeline's climb has its own unique quirks.
Madeline's climb up the mountain, referred to as Celeste Mountain, hence the title of the game, involves her encountering a wide array of roadblocks. Some physical, but many more of the mental and emotional variety.
With the bizarre part of Celeste Mountain being the fact that some of these emotional roadblocks intertwine with the real world, amongst other strange oddities along the way.
The climb might be mentally and physically taxing, but hey, it isn't all that bad if you got a good friendo to tag along with you, especially if they capture and retain some of the moments for years to come.
The visuals of Celeste can look rather simple at first glance, what with this being another sprite-based 2D platformer on the indie scene. However, the strengths come more from the visual clarity on the main character and the environment. Simple things like Madeline's hair changing color is a perfect indicator as to how much you can still dash, and the stage hazards are easy to see at a glance.
Often when a 2D platformer has a sprite-based art style, it's mainly done to replicate the look and feel of the game from the 8 and 16-bit eras. While this is still partially true with Celeste, the way the environment is presented, along with the expressions and the general bounciness of Madeline's character sprite, all gives Celeste a unique visual distinction. The sprite work in general is just really well done with how detailed the foreground and backgrounds are, and how effectively color is utilized.
Aside from the sprite work, there's also the hand-drawn art used throughout the game. Since the sprites lack any facial features, the game makes use of more animated portraits for the cutscenes, and they do well in conveying the emotions of each of the characters. My favorite moment is when Theo is trying to escape the hotel in Chapter 3, and because he's upside down in this scene, they flipped his portrait as well. It's a nice touch.
I myself really like when Madeline, Madeline's evil half, essentially begins to climb out of her portrait frame when she's yelling at Madeline. It's really effective at adding an extra layer of tension and catching the player off guard. The stills used for the chapter complete screens also do a great job conveying where Madeline is at this point in her journey. For as simple as it is, it's really effective and also just super cute.
Also, the map screen looks nice. There's not much left to say, I just like how it looks. Celeste is a 2D platformer akin to all those retro games that the indie scene has been calling back to for many years now, though its primary influence can be found with more recent titles like Super Meat Boy, since the main character has a limited moveset and it's the environment that changes things up. Because the game is in a 2D setup, it's quite simple to get a hand of, and I've played my handful of platformers over the years. I bet I can tear through this game in no time flat.
This game is super difficult, and chances are you're going to die. A lot. Celeste is a game of trial and error, figuring out the exact method and path you need to clear each screen. This means you'll likely fail several times trying to conquer most of the challenges. Throughout the game, you're looking at dying potentially up to thousands of times altogether. We'd know because the game keeps count.
You think that a game that puts this much emphasis on your death count would become obnoxious, but honestly, it's hardly an issue. It's even encouraging in a way. The devs flat out say that your death should be treated like a badge of honor, more so than anything else. Also, in general, the game is a lot more forgiving than its retro-inspired peers, since the respawn time is really quick and each screen is rather short with a checkpoint at the beginning of each one.
Madeline has a core moveset that consists of wall jumping, grabbing onto ledges, and a dash ability that gives her an extra boost in one of 8 different directions. Until later parts of the game, you only get one dash that resets upon landing on safe ground. It's a pretty simple moveset all things considered, but every stage in Celeste introduces new mechanics and obstacles that utilize Madeline's moveset in really fun and clever ways.
Just going by the first level, you have platforms that affect how you move based on the momentum of each platform. Chapter 2 has blocks that you can fly through in one direction, plus a chase with your cosmic clones, plus you needing to collect keys to open doors. The last one I'll bring up is the Mirror Temple in Chapter 5. That uses lighting and darkness to great visual effect, red bubbles that yeets you in one of the 8 cardinal directions, along with the use of platforms that move in sync with your dashing. All of these stages have something unique to offer, and it keeps the flow of Celeste interesting throughout the whole journey. Except for Chapter 4. We don't mention that one.
But aren't you?
We don't mention that one.
The music is very good.
And? I mean, there's more to Celeste's OST than just how good the songs are.
Oh, right, sorry, my brain stopped working. Anyways, Celeste has a pretty unique sounding OST that frequently combines chiptune with both piano instrumentation and synthwave. Much like the visual aesthetic, the soundtrack gives the impression of the game paying homage to the 8 and 16-bit eras, while also having a unique vibe all its own. Pretty much any track from this game you would immediately recognize even if you hear it outside of the game. The piano and synthwave are also utilized in a pretty unique manner. The piano is mainly used to represent Madeline, while the synthwave tends to represent Madeline. Often it feels like around the beginning, the synthwave is used to give sort of an overwhelming feeling, essentially feeling like it's working against the player, while around the end of the game, piano and synthwave work together more harmoniously.
For me, what stood out about the music was the zen-like quality of each piece. The composer, Lena Raine, deserves a lot of props for this OST. This is a very challenging game, doubly so if you're going for the B-side levels, so having the music be something that you can zone out to is really helpful when powering through the hundreds of deaths that these levels put you through. There's also a nice mix of ambiance and catchy tunes here, with both setting the mood throughout the game very well. And then there's the incredible voice acting in this game. And by that I mean the cute little mumbles that the characters use. It's charming. I like it. The goal of Celeste is simple enough, get to the top of the mountain. Though things start to get strange along the way, as even at the base of the mountain, Madeline gets the power to dash in midair. Things are just so weird here, not even reflections act normally. Traveling around the world and being placed out of your comfort zone can lead to some form of self-discovery, and if anything else, throughout this journey, we see Madeline put through some unique scenarios, as well as getting to see a different side of her in a literal sense.
Madeline's journey up the mountain I feel can best be described as her metaphorical fears and insecurities taking a very literal and physical manifestation. Every obstacle she encounters and has to push through in some way reflects how she's currently feeling. Examples being the first full chapter conveying her feelings of doubt, Chapter 3 where she feels suffocated by Mr. Oshiro's constant attempts to have her stay at his worn-down hotel, along with the frustration of nothing she did actually helping him out, and Chapter 6 where she feels defeated after her massive fall off the mountain, right before the self-realization that ultimately allows her to reach the peak, just to name a few.
I think what also helps this journey is the characterization of Madeline herself. She is incredibly relatable with her personal struggle involving mental health, with that part of the game involving the feather, along with the controller vibrations mimicking a heartbeat, being a relatable moment when it comes to dealing with an anxiety attack. Her stubbornness is also a nice touch, seeing as you'll be dying 100 times per level, and the best way to get the main character and the player on the same page is to convey the same level of persistence of trying to beat a seemingly impossible task through her personality. It's small inclusions like this which makes this simple plot feel more impactful. Okay, so the next few minutes will be filled with spoilers for the end of the game. I'd recommend that you check the timestamp for later in the video if you want to avoid spoilers for the final level and the post-game. And for those of you who are watching the premiere, I'd recommend that you just mute the video for the next 2 to 3 minutes, and jump to a different tab if you want to avoid visual spoilers. With all that said, let's continue. So after Madeline levels up, the 7th chapter has a nice use of reincorporation, where the majority of the level consists of miniature versions of all the obstacles from the 6 previous chapters. It's a great final level, especially with the double dash that you get to coast through these obstacles.
The final chapter, at least from the main game, does a pretty great job conveying how far Madeline's come from the beginning of the game to now. It feels like she's effortlessly plowing through all of the challenges that gave her so much trouble beforehand. As if now, instead of antagonizing and fighting against Madeline, she's accepted her as a part of herself. Something something Persona 4 joke something something.
My favorite part is throughout the level you get a visual indication of how far you've ascended to the top of the mountain. Starting at the bottom of the mountain, then the height of how far you're going gets shown off at the end of each section. The last few hundred meters feeling like the culmination of all that's been achieved throughout the game. And at the end of it all, when you make it to the top of the mountain, you can take solace in the fact that you've accomplished something great. An experience that cannot be peaked. Except for some post-game levels.
Chapter 8 is the first post-game level that you unlock after getting several crystal hearts in the main levels. It's much lighter on story, but it definitely cranks up the challenge quite a bit. In the heart of Celeste Mountain, your dash ability doesn't reset when you hit the ground, and it only does so upon hitting one of these gems or making your way to another screen. That, along with the whole gimmick of switching between fire and ice, offers a unique challenge and a fun extra little bit of content.
Chapter 9 has you go through space. This is the culmination of all the level gimmicks of Celeste, as this chapter adds a few things like space jellyfish that use like a parachute, as well as a space pufferfish for bouncing off of. Since this level takes place after the main story and the heart of the mountain, the devs didn't hold back on making this one of the hardest chapters in the game, with tons of hazards throughout the level and many marathon sections. They went all out with this one, especially with the story beats.
It's absolutely worth playing this chapter though, along with being a super fun test of skill that really pushes how well versed you are with the basic gameplay mechanics. It also tells a follow-up story about Madeline dealing with and having to come to terms with the loss of one of her loved ones. It's a lovely, albeit especially brutal send-off for the dev team to end this game on.
Also, trans rights.
Hell yeah!
Celeste takes a formula that's been done many times before and does something special with it. This is a damn fun game with a great lineup of levels and a well-told story that will stick with me long after this review.
I didn't really know what to expect from Celeste when I first played it 3 years ago, but it instantly hooked me and quickly made its way to becoming one of my favorite games of all time. Playing it again recently, my opinion has only improved, and honestly, it's probably my favorite game, period. So yeah, I kinda like this game a lot, and you should play it.
The game is available on PC, PS4, Switch, and Xbox One for $20. The quality of the game that you're getting here, alongside the remix variants of all the levels, makes this an easy recommendation. Give it a shot. It's well worth your time.